Thank you. Okay. All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Westport Prevention Coalition's roundtable discussion, Mindful Drinking, Reimagining Our Alcohol Habits and How They Impact Our Relationships. I'm Margaret Watt. I'm the host tonight. I'm the prevention director here in our offices. We're at Positive Directions, the Center for Prevention and Counseling. And as most of you know, and not everyone had been here before, right? It's we're a nonprofit behavioral health organization located in Westport. We do provide prevention, treatment, and recovery, including peer support for mental health and substance use. And I'm very proud that we co-chair the Westport Prevention Coalition with Kevin Godburn here from the Youth Services Department at the city, at the town. And we're also the fiduciary for the Prevention Coalition. So what is a Prevention Coalition? It's a group of community members representing different sectors in the town, working together to prevent substance misuse across the lifespan. So across the lifespan means that tonight we're going to hear a conversation from teens, from seniors, from middle ages, representing different stages and ages of life. We really wanted to have a community conversation around alcohol in Westport. And that's because when we've been talking the last year or so around our table about substance misuse prevention, alcohol seems to keep coming up, right? It's baked into our society in general. I did want to go back and talk about the word substance misuse. Our message isn't all alcohol, all substances are bad all the time for everyone. Things are nuanced. It's who, it's where, it's when, it's how much. But in our conversations around this topic, we always realize that alcohol keeps coming up. So what we're going to do tonight is have a genuine, honest conversation with community residents, thinking about the alcohol habits we have and how they affect our relationships, how that's changed during COVID. And we're going to see what emerges because we've got the right people in the room. So we're going to start by just letting everyone go around the circle and introduce themselves. Just tell everybody, this can be less awkward now that I don't have to look over here. Tell us your name, how long you've been in Westport, and what sort of hats you wear in town.
Great. Thank you. Nice to see you, Margaret. My name is Sue Pfister. I'm the director of the Westport Center for Senior Activities. I've been with the Department of Human Services for 34 years. It doesn't seem that long. Every year has been more enjoyable than the next. And in terms of hats, really my goal is to make sure that the community seniors are aware of all the wonderful offerings that we have at the center. So I try to get involved as much as I can with nonprofit and civic organizations in town. And people sometimes recognize me at Stop and Shop, so that's a good thing.
Hi, I'm Bill Mitchell, and I'm a native Westporter, as some of you know, they're on the Zoom tonight. And we have a family of clothing stores, Mitchell's here in Westport. And many of you do know that I am a recovering alcoholic of over 31 years. I got sober back in 1990. My kids were Staples, off to college, and then Bedford Middle School. And so all I'm going to do when it's my turn is to chow into this conversation tonight is just to give you my experience, strength, and hope. And as was noted earlier, you'll never hear from me what to do. I'm only going to tell you my own experience. And alcohol played a big part. We have 3 generations of Mitchells in recovery. So it's a family disease. I'll stop right there.
That's great. Thanks, Bill.
Yep.
We're so glad you're here.
Thanks. Great to be here. Thank you.
Talia.
I'm Talia Perkins. I'm a senior at Staples High School. And I'm the co-president of the Teen Awareness Group, which is a club at Staples that basically talks about mental health and substance abuse awareness without the stigma. So I'm also a native Westporter, and I'm the representative of a team.
Good evening. I'm Melissa McGarry. I'm the parent of 3 teenagers and young adults, including 1 Staples graduate, 1 Staples sophomore. I've also been working in the field of prevention for almost 20 years, and I've lived in Westport for 10.
Thanks.
Hi, everybody. My name is Deirdre Eckholt. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and I work for the Town of Westport Human Services Department. And I am also a clinician in a private practice. I've lived in Westport for 9 years and I have 2 students who have gone through Staples, well, close to, so she's a senior at Staples, and another daughter who's a senior in college.
Thanks, Deirdre. Thanks, everyone. This is a great group. And those of you who are online, I'm going to invite you as we have this conversation here to be thinking about the same questions for yourself. Maybe answer them. You can talk to each other in the chat. Kevin's going to be able to moderate the chat. And so we can have a kind of a hybrid model discussion right here. So we're going to start by kind of breaking the ice, thinking back to our childhoods. And I'm going to invite you. I guess one thing I'll say is everybody doesn't have to answer every question, right? We were talking about this. We want this to be just a genuine conversation. So feel free, don't look to me for the next question. Let's kind of just keep the conversation going, bat ideas around off each other. But I'd love to hear from most of you, at least, about an early memory you have related to alcohol. And what I'd like you to share is who was involved in that memory and how did that relationship influence the particular event in any way? Whoever would like to
I
start.
don't have any, I'll jump in, Bill. I don't have a particular event, but I can remember that my parents drank every night. And that at times, as I was growing up and going through school system in Westport, their mood would change. And fortunately, some of you know I played sports. In those days, a couple of coaches I had, you know, if you drank, you were off the team. And I also had a situation where I felt, as I was growing up, as I was a senior at Staples, I got the feeling that I felt less than and unworthy. And I didn't really have any drinking episode until I was at almost to graduation. And a couple of my friends and I got some beer, went down the beach, got drunk. And I said, wow, that feels good. I feel better. That was my early on experience that led into a whole other participation of at 47, you know, I got sober, so.
So those right there, though, the first early memories were with your parents, and then the first sort of
Well,
opportunities.
a lot of my friends also drank. I mean, it was 18 years old at one
Yeah.
point, you know, you go to New York, it was a short trip down to New York, you know, put some beer or booze in the car and partying and so forth. I stayed away from that only because of football, basketball, and tennis. But I did not, but I watched my mother's side, all alcoholics, no one was in recovery. And it was just kind of I just watched all this, never thinking that I was going to get the disease of alcoholism.
I remember as a child, the doorbell would ring between like 5:30 and 6:30. And I would go into the dining room. My dad would take the bottle of wine. It was the elderly woman who lived across the street. And back then they didn't have the screw top wine bottles. And so my dad would uncork it and hand it back to her, thinking that like none of us saw that. We knew exactly what was going on. And I didn't really, until Margaret and I had a conversation earlier today, I hadn't really thought about that trigger. But I remember just being a little girl. And she turned out to be an alcoholic and went through recovery. She's passed on now, but I remember those times very vividly.
So that's a different kind of early memory.
Yeah.
And it sounds like your dad was maybe trying to be a little bit surreptitious about that.
Yes.
What are some other early memories? And, you know, they may not have been quite like that. It might not have involved someone.
Yeah, mine's a little bit different where I actually can't remember my parents drinking much. If they did have alcohol in the house, I remember back, you know, it would be probably the 80s, that there'd be a box of wine in the refrigerator and that would come maybe at a holiday time. It would still be there months later, like kind of like, so I actually didn't see that in my own family. But of course, so I grew up in a small town in Illinois that's right at the border of Wisconsin. So it was 21 drinking age in Illinois, but 18 in Wisconsin. It was only 10 minutes to Wisconsin. So I definitely, you know, that probably played some sort of factor of just being a teenager. and knowing you're a senior in high school or you're 18, and then you actually at where I lived, you had a little bit more ability to go to over the border.
Yeah, I grew up in a similar, in that there wasn't much alcohol around at all. I have no early memories of alcohol. It was kind of in the house for guests, but then it would get dusty and no one would ever drink it. It wasn't until I got to high school that I actually saw people drinking to get drunk. Like that was really foreign to me. It was just a different experience than what I think my kids see now.
Yeah, I don't really remember it like, I mean, this is kind of recent, but like, I don't remember it so much in my house, but whenever I went with my parents somewhere, like a family event or like a social event, just like alcohol would be in the background. And I was just like, oh, that's what parents do. And it was always kind of there. And like, once like my dad like let me like stick my pinky in it and try it. And I was like, this is disgusting. And he was like, no, like adults do that. And I'm just like, well, like, no, I'm never gonna do that. That's disgusting. So it's my first memory.
I think a lot of kids have that kind of, you know, if that someone in the family says, you know, try this, have a little bit, you know, or it's at a wedding or something, right? So there's all these family associations, friend associations, but things that you observe when you're very young sometimes, and they're sending messages that might be subconscious. So those are some earlier life things. Let's kind of pull right back up to the current day, but maybe before COVID. So before life changed in the last couple of years, let's think about your sort of daily life, you know, normally in Westport. How much would you say that your relationships with your family or your social circle in town, you know, whoever you want to define it as, typically involve alcohol? So normal social life before the pandemic.
Well, I've moved around a lot. I've lived in, you know, Chicago, Tampa, Hong Kong, Lake Forest, Illinois, and a lot of social things that my husband and I and kids, or my husband and I did, is he's a big golfer. So golfers, it's like the country club and it's the whole social. So I would say the most alcohol that's kind of ever in my life is really in a social setting around golf, which is, and I don't really golf, but that is my correlation to sort of a club setting where you're like, there's a sport, whether it's tennis or golfing.
I think most of my social interactions, alcohol is present. It's not necessarily central, but it's, you know, if we're at the beach on a summer night, someone's got a cooler or someone's got a bottle of wine. And if we go out to dinner, there's usually drinks. If you go to each other's homes, there's usually drinks. It's there, but if you don't partake, you don't partake. And I don't think anyone really blinks if you don't, but it is always there.
Yeah, I feel like when I see my parents drinking alcohol at a social event, it's more like casual and everyone's they just have like a few drinks like in their hand. I'm Jewish and we have like Shabbat every Friday, and that's literally part of like the culture, that's part of like the ceremony that there's. So it's just more like casual. And then I've noticed when I got into high school, when you hear about like the parties that happened over the weekend on Monday, it's just like, oh, that was a rager. Like it's more like binge drinking because it's so it's not like as normal and it's not legal. So I feel like there's more of that culture of like going crazy and like trying to get drunk rather than it being like something on the side that's just part of the event.
For me, a lot of my friends, myself included, we enjoy craft beers. So there usually are beers associated with going out. We do it respectfully and healthy, but we have a conversation about it. In terms of being around my family, I do have a family member who's in recovery, so we're very sensitive to that. So my family does not drink a lot in that presence.
Of course, you say pre-COVID, I'm the senior citizen in this room by a lot. When you looked at the senior center, but
It's always open.
but I know, thank you. Thank you. My father-in-law went there for years, but anyway, I mean, it just brings back such hard memories of you guys, and I think growing up that in my own personal life with when I was drinking, and I noticed that Dan Rook's on the call today. He certainly can remember me yelling at him. I was probably hungover, but he was winning games anyway without my help. But seriously, it was awful for me. When I think about driving, talk about remembering experiences of me driving home from games. Not so much when the kids were at Staples, but more than that, from other events, sporting events. I am a golfer. It was always the 19th hole, we call it, and have a few drinks. And then that drive, where I played golf was not too far from my home. Actually, all of this was just, and it was just increasing and increasing. So the awareness is what, I know we may get to that later, but most people don't have a problem. I mean, they don't need recovery like I needed it. So, but just to be aware that if you've got, as you say, you've got a family member in recovery, if someone is in recovery in your family, it's genetically, I was disposed, as of my kids and my grandchildren, actually. So I'm kind of wandering here a little bit, but but the pre-COVID, and I'm going to get to the current, is that was sort of my long time pre-COVID. It just progressed, is what I'm saying. And into something where, blackouts occurred in my life. It was horrible. I was in such denial that I needed help, but I couldn't stop. I needed to drink. Now now I have, no problem going out if other people are drinking, but, I'll just get my coveted ginger ale and, be a good boy. Try to one day at a time.
Thanks for being so open about all that. Oh, that's great. And
Well, I just hope I can help somebody. So many people help me. Some people on the call, I noticed, helped me a lot. And I think that's what we do in Westport. It's a caring community. I mean, Dan's podcast, the people I've seen, the families that we're involved with, we're just a caring community. And when someone's got an issue, you try and help if they want it. What you guys do.
That's also right, we do, but that's also the tough part, right? When do people want it or when do they not want it? But I think you just highlighted too that, you are at the point, so in the pre-COVID days, that you've gotten to the point where you can go and be around people who are drinking and you're not drinking.
Yeah.
I want to kind of talk a little bit about what is it like, this kind of jumping around a little bit, but what is it like if you are trying not to drink in Westport? You were talking about sports, Dear Garden. You and I were talking about sports yesterday too, right? Like if the tradition is at the end of every game, the 19th hole, if there's always alcohol around, what's it, you said, Melissa, that no one's pressuring you. It's okay if you don't want to drink. What's it like if you're actually those sort of really struggling to not drink in Westport? What does that do to your cultural life?
Well, I can just speak a little bit as a clinician, hearing, my clients talk about it, who are golfers, or their social life in the summer is outside in activities. And that is a huge challenge because they don't want to lose their friendships, which is relationships, connections. It's who they are and when they're the happiest. But the idea of not drinking is very challenging for them. It's very hard. And it's probably one of the biggest reasons I feel like they often go on a good path and then relapse, because that social activity was too hard to not.
I'm wondering if those folks are open with their colleagues, their golfers, because I feel like in a community where you talk about a problem, where you're comfortable, that everyone rises to the occasion and supports one another if they can voice their issue.
Right. I think that's the tricky thing I have to say about, like, if you're in a club or group, something like that, a lot of times it is a kind of a shame. There's still shame and stigma.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people keep it as under wraps a bit.
Well, and it's interesting because even if it's not shame and stigma, I know, Melissa, you and I were talking a little bit yesterday about the whole, it's like it's wine o'clock somewhere, like that kind of how much does conversation, so I guess let's talk about how much does conversation around alcohol, jokes around alcohol, pervade the culture or not? And just if you think about, yeah, let's just think about the places we go in Westport, the things we do, where we encounter alcohol and where our relationships take place, because really our focus is on the fact that relationships are everything, right? If your relationships are based on alcohol, then if you give up your alcohol, you lost something big. But
I was also thinking of all the wonderful traditions in Westport, right? We have all these events, and I think the Memorial Day Parade was the only one I could think of that doesn't have alcohol. You know, even the Yankee Doodle Fair this year, they opened a wine and beer garden as like a fundraiser. Like everything is tied to 4th of July, you know, kids sports. You know, I just went through them and I was like, oh my God, motorcade, Staples motorcade. You know, like a lot of these traditions, alcohol's embedded, except for Memorial Day Parade.
and a couple of those ones that you mentioned are they're family events and they're kid events where if we know that it's illegal at those ages, but those things are still happening, then that's, you know.
And I think the impression is that alcohol is like entwined with the fun we have in town sometimes, you know,
I'll jump in with you on that too, because I thought the biggest fear I had was, you mentioned the word stigma. There was a big stigma across my forehead when I got out of Silver Hill. You know, my kids were in town, my parents were alive, and family business, and you know, it was tough. And but then slowly, but the biggest fear I had, believe it or not, was how can I have fun again?
Right.
How can I go to a hockey game, a football game? We got a lot of sportscasters in this town, many of whom are good friends. How can I go into some of my family members' homes when they're drinking and my hand is shaking, you know, wanting to look at that bottle of gin or scotch? But over time, no one cares whether I have what's in my hand. They just don't. No bartenders ever said to me that I can remember, oh, wouldn't you like a little, no, I'll take a gin drink. Yeah, do you drink? Yeah, I drink. I'll have a Coke. And that's the end of it. So now I'm the extreme end of the continuum that couldn't stop. But I always worry about my dear young friends where the pressure, and you may have kids in school now too. I know my own boys, I know my grandchildren the same way. Some live down in Greenwich, some live in Long Island. It's the same. It's the pressure is on to be part of the club, whatever club that is, right? You ladies are in recovery, you do it for a living. So it's the awareness, though, I think is the thing. And that if you've got a problem, I urge everybody on this call, regardless of your age, get it out, talk to somebody, talk to some people here that do it for a living at this table. And, you know, I told you earlier, there were incidents where I felt less than, unworthy. I don't feel that way today, you know, and so I'll stick to my water tonight. I'll keep the beer for tomorrow. For me, it's only for me.
I found that my nieces are in their 30s now, but they did not drink and drive the way my generation did. So I feel like we've made, through education and prevention and just conversation, we've made a tremendous jump in a positive way with drinking and driving.
I think as a parent, I've often felt maybe at odds with some of my peers because we don't allow kids to drink at our house. I think our graduation party might have been the only one that didn't serve alcohol to the high school graduates. And I think that's certainly sometimes been hard, but I am pleased to see that like the drinking and drive, parents take a lot of care to make sure that kids don't drink and drive, and whether it's not even allowing kids to bring cars to a party, they have to Uber or they have to. So, I mean, I think we take some good steps to do some kind of harm reduction, but there is very much a drinking culture. And if you're not, I never felt it was my role to serve other people's children. That's not, that's not a role I want to play. It's not what I want my kids doing. And I felt like that was something I had to do, but there were times it was tough. And, to be that parent, to be the one, while other parents were much more permissive than I was. And one of the challenges in Westport, I think, is we do bring people who lived all over the world in different cultures, and they come with their, whatever their cultural norms are and their laws. And it's 16 where I came from, they can drink when we go home. Why are we, and that can be really challenging in a community community like ours.
Melissa, have your kids ever talked about how it felt for them to have like the house that we're not serving alcohol, and they're asking a lot of questions around that? And
Yeah, I mean, it's funny now, like so we hosted a post prom for my son, for his friends, and my college daughter said to him, like, your friends are okay with mom's rules? Like they want to come to our house? And he was like, yeah, that's not something they're not interested. So it's just that group of kids they were fine to come to my house and be in the pool and hang out, and that wasn't something they needed, but I think it varies by group, whether that's something that is okay. And it's a norm within it's like a subgroup norm, I guess, you know, and it's just, we don't talk a lot about it. My kids know, I tell their friends' parents, like, hey, you know, this isn't something we allow. If your kids are here, this is not. We're gonna.
Well, when you talk about the subgroups, again, it goes back to the relationships, right? Like people use substances with their friend group or their family group or whoever it is, or they don't. And you were talking about Memorial Day before being the one sort of sober event in town, but isn't that still fun or is that less fun? Does the town think of that as less fun than 4th of July or Lobster Fest or everything else?
It's 9 in the morning, so that might be.
I was gonna say, it starts at 9 o'clock and ends at 10:15.
So hopefully there's no alcohol. That's
Maybe if we held it later in the day.
Let's get it on the table.
because then everyone's going to barbecue.
Yes, I mean, whatever they're doing later, but you know, you don't.
Good point. Yeah.
Maybe we need to hold more early in the day activities, but
Okay.
yeah, it is. I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are.
I mean, I feel like I'm not a parent, so I can't really say, but I feel like it's definitely a fine line. Like I see parents are way too open with it and way too encouraging, and I'm like, I mean, that's their choice, but that's kind of like promoting it in their child. And then I see parents who are way too strict and their child goes behind their back, and when they get in a bad situation, they can't call their parents.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a fine line, and I'm like not there yet. But it's definitely something that's hard to balance, and I see it among different kids, like how they react to their parents' style with substances. Like it can affect everyone differently.
Tony, I'm gonna ask you a question. You don't have to answer it because I may put you on the spot and you could say no, okay? You're seniors at Staples High School. I was a senior once. My boys were all seniors once. Would you say in the 4 years, now you're in your 4th year, that drinking and drug addiction, well, we're talking about drinking mostly tonight, but drug is a drug, has increased or stayed the same or lessened? Is it, or more importantly, is it a real problem?
I feel like as you increase in grade, it definitely becomes more prevalent. And I think there's just more parties, people are allowed to go out more. And it's definitely not every single group who like has a party every single weekend. But if there is a setting like that, like you're in the basement, you're in someone's garage, like that's kind of, that's like the center of attention. So if you're like in a group where your relationships, I guess, are based on alcohol and that's what you do every single weekend, then it is going to increase. But if, you do that every other month or whatever, and mostly you're just like doing stuff with your friends, yeah, it's just about your choices. But I feel like I definitely see in younger grades over the years, like, at my age, I feel like maybe like freshman year, I didn't feel like that when people were drinking. And now when you look at the freshmen now, I feel like there are more kids involved with that, and people are just like growing up too much too fast. I don't know if seniors thought that when I was a freshman too.
Thanks.
I think as a parent of a senior too, what we deal with is this impression that we have to get kids ready for college, that we can't send them off to college without like drinking experience, that they need to be ready, that if they go in and they don't have this great experience, all this experience drinking, that they're going to be ill prepared or they're going to go off the deep end or they're, and I do, I think I see a lot more relaxing of rules and norms as kids like get to their junior and senior year, because we're getting ready to launch our kids. Plus they get licenses, they get more independence, they're not quite as tethered to their parents. And there definitely does seem to cultural norm in towns like Westport, where it's like, okay, they're all going to college and they're all gonna be in the party culture there, so they're getting ready.
Well, I figure I could throw in a couple statistics because we did do that youth survey last year that a lot of you know about and you took, right, Talia? So just to your point, the drinking does increase as kids get older, and that's typical because you're more out there, more independent, people have a license, everything else. But I actually wrote it down. So what we found was that in Westport last April, when people took the survey, a quarter of all middle and high school students were drinking. So I think a quarter of kids drinking during the pandemic when things were locked down is kind of still a lot because presumably they had less access and less partying. And at the same time, that means 75% were not drinking. And I wonder if people have that impression, right? And it did increase though. So it was like, when we broke it down, it was 9% of middle schoolers, 33% of all high schoolers, but then grade by grade, it was 60% of the seniors, which is your point. Like as people get older, they're sort of, they might be thinking they want to be ready for college. Their families might be thinking they want to be ready for college. And the assumption is that you're going to drink in college. But I'm wondering if, do those statistics surprise you, Talia? Like, would you actually, does it feel like it's a lot more than, you know, you're saying the freshmen seem to be drinking more, but so if it was only 9% of middle schoolers last year, they're freshmen this year. Does it seem like it's more than 9% now? Or do you think they think it's, do people come up into the high school and feel like this is what you do? Because everybody does it.
Yeah, I feel like, I guess like preparing for the next step, like we're talking about with college, like what I heard around me was, oh, there's like a big drinking culture at Staples. So like, I feel like everyone kind of anticipates that. Like when you go to the game and like you see the seniors drunk on like motorcade or something like that, like you just, it looks really prevalent and like, I don't know, there's a lot of awareness, which is good, but it kind of makes you like hyper aware and like think it's more normal than it is maybe. And I feel like especially for COVID, when there's not like a lot of social events, that is so alarming because that means someone's like doing it in their room by themselves or something. Which is,
Which we heard about during COVID, right? Yeah. So how have things changed? We were talking a little bit about like what was sort of the norm in Westport culture in your social circles before COVID. Now we're 2 years into it. Nationally, we know that alcohol consumption increased during COVID. We know some people were, we put it on the flyer, right? It's up on the screen here, that some people were, drinking earlier in the day, starting like during business meetings, et cetera, and some people not. So I can also say there were like significant percentages of people who stopped using substances during COVID. What have you guys seen evolve in the last couple of years and where are we now? What's the new norm?
I think for the seniors, the pandemic really threw them for a loop. For seniors, having a routine is really important. And a lot of them, or if they already were suffering with anxiety or depression or isolation or stress, the fear of catching COVID, all of that for some seniors, not for all, obviously, really escalated their alcohol consumption. And I actually witnessed that. I did a home visit to a woman who I knew drank socially. And then when I went to her home, there were literally wine bottles lined up on the floor. And we talked about it, and she starts at like 11 o'clock in the morning, and then she drinks until 2, her aide leaves at 3 and puts her to bed, and she's safe in her bed until the next day. And it's because she's lonely. She's lonely. Her routine of her activities have all got disruptive during the pandemic and the shutdown. So it's really hard to see. And as you get older, your body doesn't metabolize the alcohol. There's more risks of falling, having an accident. Then if you're on prescription medication, the interactions. So the pandemic really, for some people, has really increased their alcohol consumption for all the reasons that I mentioned.
Yeah. And that loneliness factor it's the other side of the social thing, right? So it's like maybe you're using to cope with loneliness, maybe you're drinking because it's what you do with your friends and it's pleasant and fun. Yeah. So
I feel like I've seen more people cut back after COVID too, maybe realizing that they were drinking more during the shutdown and realizing they don't feel good or, they want to wake up in the morning and not have that headache from red wine or, just.
Or they gained a few pounds.
Yeah, that too, right? I definitely have seen more people say, I've just stopped, which is great.
Did it seem like, do you mean like more recently at this point in the pandemic? Like, was it, let's do dry January or let's cut
No,
back?
I think it was more like a more permanent than dry January. I think we have seen an uptick in dry January. I always do dry January. I just think it's a great way to start the year, but or recover from maybe the holiday season a little bit. But I've seen where people just give it up altogether, and these weren't people who I think felt that they had, but just thought, it's not really adding anything to my life, and I don't really need it, and just kind of stopped. And definitely noticed a few of my friends who just said, I don't drink anymore.
Like we use it as a coping mechanism, right? Instead of, searching our souls and doing some mindful meditation, people pick up the bottle because that made them feel better quicker.
As a clinician and therapist, I'd say a lot of my clients who are struggling very seriously with alcohol issues, having after post-COVID is working from home and not having the connection, not having anywhere to go, losing the structure, losing, it gives you an opportunity. So when that's one of, like you were saying, Bill, like that was part of how your family, and it was like an issue that automatically that you felt when you were young, that you couldn't have just like one or two. It's just, you realized it just kept going. And some of my clients say that that's what started to happen on a work day, and it's really hurt their relationships, including their jobs. Like I have one client who actually lost his job because the work could, at some point you can kind of like get by, but at a certain point with relationships, they know when things are sliding and the person's not really present anymore. So it's been really hurting some people in the employment sector.
I think that's very important what you said. I know it's my own story of this is my disease of alcoholism progressed, and it is a progressive disease, as we all know, and the other pills and other drugs. But for me, I'm a lucky guy that can say that my wife stuck with me. Okay, I mean, I got out of Silver Hill. I thought I was going to get a magic pill, and that was going to be it. And but it just took time, meetings, recovery. My oldest son, Scott, I think I mentioned that to you when we were talking with your group. Was a couple of years ago. He hated his father. He couldn't wait to go off to college. He would say, "Tell me what you thought of your father if he were here today, back in 1990." It pains me, but I hated my father. But he would say today, he put his arm, I will do it to you, Ty. He put his arm around my neck, and he said, Dad, because the bald head, he said, "You're my best friend today." So we talk about how alcohol impacts relationships. I was losing everything, and I didn't know I was losing anything because the bottle was my best friend.
That was your relationship.
And today, I made some new friends today. I was amazed, right? I mean, just sitting there talking to people out, listening to this, it's
Well, and you're sharing your story, which is so wonderful, and it's affecting so many people in the community. You're saving lives.
well, people saved my life, and that's the whole deal too. I'm not going to get into the whole AA consumption, but many people know it anyway. But you got to give it back. You got to take someone's hand when they need it, and they took mine. People on this call tonight. I'm not going to go into any other names, but they know where they are, and still do. It's and by the way, I'm having more fun than I ever did, but because I used to pass out at this hour. I know we laugh about it now, but it was a sickness. It was a disease. It's a disease, and so it's. You just have to be careful. Most people can have one or two drinks, even three maybe, and stop. That's great. But in a conversation, 19th all have a couple of drinks, and you're fine. Not with Bill Mitchell. Didn't work that way.
Well, you're talking about you're talking so openly and honestly, which is so amazing, but like you've already made reference to, you know, the fact that you could have lost your wife, but you didn't. Your family stuck with you. But you know, that you didn't even know how you were harming your relationships when you were still drinking actively. And so I think
Exactly.
if people are listening to this right now and maybe they're like your friends who are sort of like, I'm gonna stop drinking now, or I'm gonna cut back. Like people could be listening right now, or any of us here could be thinking about ourselves, our own family member, and going, yeah, maybe I've been drinking a little more than I wanted to during the pandemic, and now's a good time to kind of cut back. Let's talk about, so what are the things you gain and what are the things you lose? Because you do lose things when you change any habits, right? Like you know, as a clinician, right? It's like changing your habits is hard. And so what are pros and what are cons of making like even incremental change, if you're thinking about it?
I would assume a pro would be that you would feel a lot better as a person. And also, I think for anyone who's spiritual or in connection with their bodies, that you could learn a lot about your soul. And I think all that will lead to more impactful relationships. And I think you're a perfect example. You probably have closest ties and relationships with your family members you never envisioned. Because you're sober, you got to know who you are inside and out.
And know when you first got sober, because you were talking about it earlier in the hallway, but when you first got sober, there was also a lot of loss, right? You were saying couldn't go hang out with.
Yeah, I mean, it was, you know, first of all, you have to be very willing to switch, to stop. And I didn't know how to do what I wanted to, but I didn't know how. So I got some, you know, and I went into the recovery program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and for the first time in my life, I was 47 yet. People said welcome, and they said thank you. I mean, they said thank you for coming, and keep coming. And then, like people, and they were like your clients, doctors, lawyers. I sell socks and underwear. Oh, no, you know, and all sorts. We all had one challenge, and some had lost spouses, some had lost kids, and I knew I didn't want to do any of that, but it was just a nice, slow progression. And then the kicker was, all of a sudden they said, Bill, I love you. I said, are you kidding me? You know, are you kidding me? And so, you know, I can go and do it. I can go out to a bar. I can sit in an airplane. Oh, that was an awful spot to be. I'm not going to tell my you know, do I drink? Oof. I don't remember half the flights I was on, but now it's. So listen, I played, one of my golf partners at the Patterson Club was chief pilot of American Airlines. He's now dead, and then but he could have been a member with me in AA. But anyway, I'm not diverting. The awareness, it's you just be aware that if you are progressing, you have a good shot of not just losing your spouse or your partner, but your children, and then your life, because that's what happens. And many of us have experienced that. So it's you know, it's, and I agree. Look at the data on the post-COVID thing, which is exactly what you're saying. A lot of our friends at my age, even, you know, in the mid-70s, late 70s, because of just exactly what you said. You know, we didn't get outside, we didn't take the walk at Campo Beach, it was cold, supposed to rain tonight, all those excuses. And then, so you just have to be aware of it, that's all. And there's plenty of help.
Yeah.
There is, right, ladies? There is so much help if you want it.
Yeah, and there's so many.
I was just gonna say, as a society, I think we should be more open to the conversation and not afraid to bring up the issue if you're struggling or if a loved one is struggling. And I think we all need to do a better job at getting to that next level. Let's talk about it. Or I notice you're drinking a little bit more than usual. What's going on?
And being ready for whatever reaction you get, because you
Right.
could just get this like, right?
Right.
Deirdre, on a clinical note, what would you say for someone who is thinking about like making some incremental change? What would your recommendations be?
Well, I was thinking about your question in regards to just positives is I do a lot of couples counseling. And if I can think back at the other spouse who's being kind of affected by the alcoholic spouse, is that there's the lives and there's a lot of stuff, the after effects, you know, that actually affects the trust and the intimacy. And it's just so powerful when they stop drinking, because suddenly all, you know, there's no longer this kind of elephant in the room or the dirty little secret, that there's like suddenly people can kind of come back out. It's almost like how you were saying, like they're like renewed and the relationship is new, and it can't, like you said, like with your wife, it can become even something more beautiful.
Absolutely. And I know I've said with my 3 boys, singularly, that I use the word concern. I'm concerned, guys, with if it's one-on-one with your drinking, because you got to be really aware of it. Being the son of an alcoholic, and all, we got a lot of other members of some of the other members of the family are in recovery also, as I said. So it's we have to be especially vigilant. But I do use that word concern, and they know I can't tell them to stop. I can't tell them they got to be on their own journey, but that there's plenty of help, and you can come to me if you need help. I'm the first guy in the world to try and do that, to try and help. So anyway.
And the idea of anonymity is so baked in for a lot of people to 12-step programs like AA. And I mean, it's in the title, right? Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, all of this. But I feel like there are so many people like you who reach a point where the anonymity doesn't matter to them anymore because it's the opportunity to help. And I think, and then there's other approaches, right? So if anyone's wondering about there are alternative things like smart recovery, we have smart recovery groups here, refuge recovery, all these things. But really, when people are willing to share their experiences, it opens the door for others to say, I'm struggling.
And I do respect anonymous. That is exactly right. That's like a word, is anonymous. It is an anonymous thing. But I have seen over my journey since 1990 that alcoholic drug addicts are more open. The stigma is lessening a little bit. I mean, I don't remember which one of you ladies, when I came in, I said, gee, I'm in recovery. Someone said, congratulations. I don't know what but that's what they say. No one says, ooh, stay away from it. You know?
Yeah.
And it is that's what they say.
It's more visible.
Congratulate, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you beat breast cancer, wow, congratulate. My wife's a survivor. I mean, that's it.
I was gonna say, there's a group locally called Glorious Recovery, and what they do is people in recovery and they learn to have fun again without substances. They go to baseball games, they go skiing, they go skydiving, and it's retraining your brain to feel the pleasure of the experience and not from the drugs and alcohol. Yeah, it's a wonderful group. So if anyone's looking,
They're amazing.
They look like they're having
started in
so much
trouble,
fun.
but They have so much fun. Yeah, and that's kind of like, it's sort of sad in a way. Like when we were talking about Memorial Day before, I remember first talking to some of them about, like, one of the first times I encountered those women, I can't remember their names right now, but they were talking about, Memorial Day, you go to everyone's barbecue and everyone's getting drunk. And they were like, but we aren't ready to be around that. So we have to have our alternate Memorial Day. So I think that's one of those things too, like when we are hosting a party or going to a party, like how, do we always have to have alcohol? That's the question. I wanted to ask you about recovery, Talia. Is there at the high school, I'm sure there are kids that are already in recovery, right? Who've already gone down that road. Is there any visibility around that? Is there any, do you know anything about that? Do you see people either talking like Bill does about their experiences, or is that still not happening visibly?
I mean, so I'm co-president of TAG, and we were talking about how all these issues are stigmatized, and obviously like at a high school, it's not supposed to be happening, but it does, and it affects people. So it's important that we talk about it. We haven't so much focused on the recovery part of it, because I feel like that's a smaller group, but like I know that there are resources at Staples. We just had a new person who joined us, Kara Lee, who works at the school and is specialized in that. And people can go into her office and she can refer people to therapists, and it's kind of like the person to talk to that doesn't have to be your parent and might not like get upset at you. So I feel like Staples is definitely doing a better job, and there are all these resources, and we as a group are like talking about these issues openly.
Great.
So yeah.
Congratulations. Wow.
Well done.
Good stuff.
If anyone doesn't know, they should visit the TAG website and also social media, but you can see the interview they did, the TAG talk with Bill, which is really amazing.
Yeah.
I loved.
So it's great, but like, even so, we wanted to broadcast to the school and they only let us show some of our tag talks in like senior classes. And it's just, I feel like these issues affect all grades. It's important to see before like you are a senior and it's so much more prevalent. But still there is some pushback with the school that they don't want people seeing that, because I think that, you know, that's not part of their lives, and the reality is that it is. Yeah.
Oh, that's concerning.
Well, and this year you guys helped us with, well, many of us here were involved with the ninth grade forum that we had early in the year that was supposed to be for those kids coming out of middle school, being freshmen, and getting information with their parents around mental health and substance use when you start in the high school, to try to make sure people know about all the supports, and also hopefully send some messages that, you know, it doesn't have to be. I feel like a lot of what you were saying was making me think that there's a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy going on. If everyone around you, kids and parents, is like, well, when you get to the school, it's going to be like this. And then as you get older, like, and when you get to college, it's going to be like this, then you feel like that's what you got to do. But the reality is, we also saw there's lots of groups that don't. Well, you know, I actually know from even the side conversations we had getting ready for this, there's so many more stories people have. And I'm even thinking of a few that you were talking about with me, Melissa, and I'm like, wow, there's just so much insight from you guys here. You know, it's like, in the two of you moving here from other towns too. So I want to give, like, let's do a speed round of like something that you were thinking about. This isn't the kind of final takeaway question. This is just, what's something that's been going through your head that you haven't had a chance to share yet? A story, anything related to this whole subject. So you all came in like wearing.
She stumped us.
Well, I think it's important, like we were talking, you know, when you go to a house party, the first thing is, oh, you know, can I bring beer or wine? It's not like, can I bring a salad? So I think,
Would you like flowers?
I just think we have to kind of rebrand our brains to realize that we can have an event, we can have fun, we can go somewhere, and none of that has to include alcohol. And whether it's just the pressure of marketing and TV and advertisements and society, all of that together, we think we can't do anything without alcohol. So, I mean, I one of my takeaways is I'm going to try to do more things without alcohol, because I realized, not that everything I do has alcohol, but I realized alcohol does not have to be the focal point of my dinner party this Saturday. The main entree is going to be my focal point.
Awesome.
Which is what?
I have to decide. You want to come?
We're all going to be there.
And to build on that, I often think also what we model for our kids too, right? Like if there's alcohol's present in everything we do that's fun, then we're priming them and we're training them. And one of my earliest memories of moving to Westport was 10 years ago. I had a 5th grader and went to a softball game, Little League softball, 4th and 5th graders behind town hall. And the women around me had coffee cups of red wine at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And that wasn't what it was like where I came from. And I was like, oh, we drink at youth sports? Like that's, like we can't watch our kids? Like, and then they got in their cars and drove their kids home, which is a whole other, but I remember just having this like little bit of culture shock of like, oh, this is different. This is different. And I was like, oh, what are we training our kid? And they were openly discussing it. So it wasn't something their kids weren't hearing. And I was like, oh, we do this with our kids all the time. We're like, oh, oh, you got the beer to go to the beach, or you got the drinks. So like we train our kids that everything has to have alcohol to be enjoyable. So just build on your point. Like I think my kids need to see it. And I've always thought this, but my kids need to see us having fun. without any alcohol present.
And to build on that, just the way we talk in front of our kids, like when if we're like had a long day at work, and if it's like a parent who then comes home and the verbiage that we use to our family, where our children are sponges and listening to us, saying, oh my gosh, it was such a stressful day. I had 7 meetings. I need some wine. That message is so strong and powerful to a 12-year-old, to an 8-year-old, because all they know is what their parents are telling them. So it's like basically, you know, the parents kind of like saying, this is how I cope.
Yeah.
And I don't think that a lot of times, I think as adults, we don't realize how powerful we are.
Right.
Our messages.
Yeah, and you're talking about like media and TV and stuff, and I was just thinking about it. At a certain point when you start like watching shows, not with teenagers, but like with adults in them. I watched this show probably when I was like 10 called How I Met Your Mother, and like so funny. I was so excited. Every like their main meeting point is like a bar, and they have like beer in their hand in every scene, and that's just like the focal point. So like your brain, it's not just your parents. Like in the media, you're just trained that if you're gonna have fun, that's gonna be part of it. So yeah.
I've even been noticing on Netflix, any movie that I open up that is showing kids from a high school getting together, it shows them every single time like drunken with weed. And I'm like, they're not always like that. But then I go, now do I have any family movies left to watch with my kids? Maybe not. Yeah. So any aha moments for anyone tonight? Like as we were having this conversation, did anything come up where you're like, I really, or even in the prep for this, you came in saying even in the prep for this, like things that have come to mind or, you know, that you want to share out, you don't have to.
I was just thinking how rare it is to just have people talking about it.
And we don't have wine.
Yeah,
And we don't have
it's
beer.
not here.
And we have fun.
Yeah.
And we laugh.
And we have a few laughs, but you know, just people don't talk about it.
And I'll piggyback on that too. I was brought up, my mother was a dominant, even though many people remember my dad, but my mother was a dominant parent before my dad opened up the clothing store and when he was 55. Tough to make a career change, but he did. Anyway, she was a strict German, and I remember coming home, maybe now that I'm thinking about your first question, what do you remember? And I came home from school and I made a gesture with my middle finger. I'm not going to do it now because I didn't know what that meant. It was like in 5th grade or something. My mother sent me to my room, no dinner. Well, I like to eat. Look at the stomach. I like to eat. You think I ever did that? I was never allowed to ask what. Billy, you're fine. Billy, you're fine. Everything is great. I kidded my mother at the very end after I got started. I said, Ma, everything isn't always fine. That's the truth. Everything isn't always fine. And I never had the opportunity. And I said to myself, now, so we're going to let our kids, we're going to ask them how they're feeling, you know, and you know, try and hopefully not have alcohol or drugs impact their life as it did mine. So, but anyway, I love the fact that when you said, you know, we're talking about it. Man, back in 1990, we talked about it, I would be sent to my room. I told you, even if I said something about the booze, Mike, you're drinking a little too much, and I know too much Canadian club. Back to the, you know. So it's what, that's it. We got to talk about it. I love that you said that.
Well, and I think with all the pressures of society and the world and just the state of the planet right now, we need to be more supportive and more open and more free to talk about our issues, whether it's substance abuse or sexuality.
Well, that's
We
true.
need to become a kinder society to make it a better society.
Amen.
Yep, for sure. Cool.
Yep.
And we're gonna have fun.
Right, we're gonna have fun.
Sue's gonna cook for us.
Right, Sue's gonna post her address in the chat either Saturday night. That was like a perfect closing comment here. You guys, thank you so much for all this. And I want to see, Kevin, has anybody got, it looks like there's some stuff happening in the chat. I don't know if you want to report out, Kevin, from there, or if anyone who's online wants to ask any questions of the group or make comments.
So there's been a lot of positive feedback. Thank you, everybody. So there's a comment in the chat, the fact that people are directly approaching the subject, talking about it, hopefully it'll become more of an open subject to be discussed with kids. This has been great. You are all awesome for being candid. Thank you. Wonderful conversation, and thank you everyone for your honesty. Great discussion. A lot of positive feedback.
That's great. Did I see Trami join earlier? Because if she's there,
Yes.
I want to give her a holler because she sent me an email and suggest, we're talking about like having fun without alcohol. And she suggested that we should do, maybe the Westport Prevention Coalition in better weather could host a taste test of all those like alternative cocktail things. And what's the name of that brewery that does the Athletic?
Yeah,
And then Seed Lip and all these other things. And I thought that was a really fun idea.
that's a great idea. I would be happy to help coordinate that.
That's
Awesome.
great.
I do those beers during Lent.
Well done.
Which must be starting sometime soon. I realize I have no idea right now this year, and I'm supposed to know. Would anyone on the call like to ask any questions or anything? I think we were all expecting, we're like, well, if Dan moves, he's probably gonna have a question.
What about ask if they have any subjects or topics they'd like us to pursue for round 2 next time?
Oh, you heard her.
I was just thinking if there's any subjects or topics that you would like to have a second conversation with, if you want to throw those out into the chat or unmute yourself.
I also want to make sure, I'm going to show a couple slides. So first of all, look, here are the participants' full names here. Thank you all because you're amazing. This was an enjoyable conversation, and I hope we all really took something away from it. I want to list a few resources. So the Westport Prevention Coalition operates as a subcommittee of Westport Together. So everyone should be hopefully subscribed to that website, following Westport Together on social media. You can go to the website and go to the Prevention Coalition page for resources and support. Positive directions. Here we have obviously a website. The hubct.org is the regional behavioral health action organization that serves Southwest Connecticut. A lot of us have been affiliated with it, and so that's a more regional resource. And I also wanted to mention turningpointct.org, which is located here at Positive Directions. The poster's over there behind Melissa. That is a youth and young adult peer support website platform. They have a lot of social media. It's all by and for teens and young adults in Connecticut around mental wellness. And one of the things that Turning Point offers is we have Ali Kernan, who is a trained recovery support specialist and recovery coach, who is available for free one-on-one peer support for young people. This is a resource guide. I guess we can't see the top of it on our side, but I think they can. So Westport Together put this together last year, and it's just Westport supports that are right here: human services, the website, youth services, that's Kevin. Kids in Crisis offers Teen Talk, that's free crisis counseling at school. Liberation programs at Staples, that's Carol Lee that you were mentioning. She's an LAD, alcohol and drug counselor. The Senior Center, that's Sue. So all these resources that we want to make sure everybody knows about. And we can send this out to anyone who wants it. This is a list of hotlines, and they're both national and local, national and statewide, that we want everyone to know about. So take a snapshot, take a screenshot, save these numbers in your phone, make sure your family knows that these are 24/7 free resources. And here's another one that you can screenshot. So this is not just behavioral health, mental health, substance resources, but other types of resources. It does show for drug and alcohol problems, this on the right, where it says drug and alcohol, there's the state access line. So if you know someone who's struggling in particular with an opioid disorder, that is a phone number you can call, and they will get you into a detox bed as soon as possible. They may even be able to get transportation there. So Connecticut and the town of Westport have so many resources that we want you to know about. This is the turningpointct.org that I mentioned. So for youth, young adults, check it out. And then that's Allie down there in the corner. She's our peer support specialist. She's in her 20s. She's gone through her own mental health and substance use story. And that's what peer support is. It's someone who's been there, done that, can help you walk that journey, but she has training and resources and a genuine gift for connecting with people.
Great.
And then I guess finally, of course, AA is an option. All the different 12-step programs, Smart Recovery we have here. We have Smart Recovery, we have a group for adults, young adult group, and a family and friends group. So you can email me if you, or just check out our website for more information about that, because I know it's less well known, but it's an alternative for people dealing with mental illness or substance use, and it's peer support, but also skills building.
You know, I just might want to chime in that asking for help, which was something that was foreign to me, is a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. And it's a whole 180-degree switch, turn, change. And there is a lot of help out there. All you people sitting here and out there too. So, it's, and if you chimed in, you can still have fun.
Right.
Again, I'll just start, I'll end where I start. I didn't get sober not to have fun, let me tell you. Those of you, you all don't know me that well sitting here. Some of those people out there know me. I do have fun. I just don't drink.
Yeah.
And you can drink modestly and still have fun too. So the point is there's plenty of help. And by the way, I just didn't go to AA at first, and I still use professional people occasionally, additive. And for the first 2 years of my sobriety, besides going to a meeting or two a day, I went back to Silver Hill once a week with a therapist there. And there was another person too, had a group session that was great. But I had younger people like yourself. It was just, we all shared the same commonality, So a lot of help out there.
Yeah.
Some of which is sitting right at this table. So now I got new names. I've only lived here all my life. I'm still learning. Anyway, not about me.
Margaret, I put those links in the chat as well.
Thank you.
And then
Thanks.
Caitlin added the hub
Great.
link as well, link too. So there are some great resources and great information on those sites. We also had a suggestion in response to other topic ideas, something about ideas for having fun without alcohol, especially for kids, but I'm sure applicable to everybody. So,
Absolutely. And I think especially kids after COVID and the shutdown and all that, but when you were just saying that, I was thinking, when you're little, when you're really little, right? When you're in elementary school, you just have fun and there's no booze, right? There's no nothing. And then somehow we trained ourselves as a society that then fun has to involve mind-altering substances, and we could probably regain a little bit of that. What I didn't make a slide for because I forgot, as the poster behind Melissa, can you grab that? Don't wait, and I'm going to try to pull it in front of the camera. I don't know if I can. Kevin, can you put positivedirectives.org/events in the chat, because we haven't even sent this out yet. Thank you, guys.
absolutely.
But this is going to be running for the month of March, the Westport Prevention Coalition. I have no idea where the camera is. For the month of March, the Westport Prevention Coalition has purchased a license for a documentary called Don't Wait. And it's aimed at parents to really help them see, the importance of talking to your kids about substance use and starting young and starting younger than you think. And we're going to be showing it so parents can grab the link from our website. They can get the promo code, watch it whenever they want, and then join us. We're going to offer 2 different nights of discussion, one for elementary school parents and one for middle and high school parents. And you can also watch it that night and stay for the discussion, or you can watch it on your own when it fits your schedule.
Great.
All
That
right.
link's up in the chat now as well.
Thank you. All right. Well, Kevin, thanks for handling it on that side over there. I guess you could probably stop recording if you didn't, but we'll have that chat too. And I want to